Release the Kraken!
Welcome back, fellow game designers. In our last couple of tutorials, we've been building our city defense, sort of missile command kind of clone. And last one we did our asteroid, I think. So this one we'll go ahead and make our building. Now, as we go ahead and put our building together, we want our building to be able to fragment or fracture, because that would be just so much cooler than just having a building in there. Now, both Unreal and Unity do have a fractured or fragmented mesh feature that you can use. If you're using Unreal, it is free. If you're using Unity, it does cost you a bit of a penny. Most of these I see are right around 10 bucks. This one looks like to be the best one here because you get very interesting breaks. But if you go into the asset store and you look for a frag mesh or fractured mesh, either one of these will bring up some fractured options. This one's 15 bucks. Looks okay. To prevent us from having to buy anything, we're going to go ahead and fracture it by hand. That way you can see how the process works. Okay, so we jump into Maya. And to make the building, we're going to keep it as simple as possible and just use a cube here. Now press F to frame up on it. And I'll bring up my channel box. Now, the size difference between Maya and Unreal is pretty consistent. It's one Maya unit, which is 1 centimeter, to one Unreal unit, which is also 1 centimeter. So that's easy. However, it's a little bit different from Maya to Unity. The default scale in Unity is 1 meter. So that means that it is 100 times the size. So we are going to have to scale this up to give it a meaningful size. So I'll go to my scale here. And actually, I'm not going to use scale. I'm going to come down to my poly inputs. And let's make this, let's see, we'll do 100 in width by 100 in depth. And then we did, for our building, we did 3 in, so that would give us 300 in the height. So there is our building. I'm going to come up to my translate Y, and I'm going to do half of it here. So it was 1.5 in Unity, so we're going to do 150 here. And this gives us a building about the size that we would have in Unity. So if we exported this right to Unity, it should be the same size as the skyscraper that we have. But once you have it, we do want to do the UVs on it. So we'll go to UV editor, and we just adjust this a little bit. And you can see we have the default UVs for a cube, which is fine, but this is not going to be easy to set up windows and such on it. To get nice UVs that we can work on and paint with this, I'm going to go up and hit Create. And I'm going to come down to Automatic. And that's going to give us a really sharp projection from all sides. And look, our UVs are building shaped. And voila, this makes life a little bit easier. But what I'm going to do is I'm actually going to combine this into one row, and I'm going to put the top and the bottom somewhere where it's easy to get a hold of. So, without further ado, I'm going to go into edge mode here. I'm going to grab a pair of edges, like so. I'm going to come over to my cut and sew tool, so you can see these right here. I'm going to go ahead and go to stitch together. Now again, if it jumps like that, it might not be good, so I'm going to go ahead and hit Control Z. I'll change this to B to A. There we go. That's much nicer. And then I'll come over, find the next available edge here. Go to UVs real quick. Double click it. I'll move this out of the way. Okay. I'll grab the neighboring edge. That works. Stitch that together. Are those in a group? Yep. Okay. I just went to UV and then double click the whole thing. Okay, and I'll grab the last one, stitch together. Double click that, I'll move it. So we have them all lined up, which is nice. And it should be pretty consistent, right? We have one side, the next side, the next side, and the next side. Okay, and then from here, again, I'm going to keep this as simple as possible. I'm just going to go ahead and just pick a spot to add our top. I'll go here, I'll add this edge. Let me go ahead and grab, stitch together. Again, I don't want the flip, so just Control Z that. I'll hit A to B this time. Awesome. Grab the bottom one and then stitch together. Yay. And then let's go to UV mode. Let's right click UVs. Double click this. This does need to fit in here. I'm going to scroll down and do layout. You might have to hit this little option to open it up, and then layout. And this will give us something easy to work in or work with in Photoshop. I'm actually going to shrink this down just a little bit more to take it off of the edges. I never liked this being butted up against the edges. It always causes some problems for me. So, and then you can take this into Photoshop, which is what we're going to do. So go ahead and double click it. Make sure you have it selected as UVs. I'm going to go up to image here, come down to UV snapshot. I'm going to export this. Let's call this city defense building. This is the skyscraper, so I'll do skyscraper UVs. We're going to use the PNG format, 2048 by 2048, and I'll hit apply and close. And then you should see down here a nice readout file saved to the location. We're going to jump over into Photoshop real quick to paint this up, and then we'll be back. Okay, so I'm in Photoshop. I'm going to go over to Open here. Let's navigate down into Maya, Projects, Default, and then it should be under the Images folder. And I'll just look for it here. I'll do City Defense, Skyscraper, yes, and I'll do Open. Okay, so now as we're popping in, this is not very easy to look at. Let's go ahead and make some changes. First thing, I'll change the name of our layer here. I'll call this UVs. And if you've ever seen any of my tutorials, you know I'm going to do a non-destructible way of editing. So it's going to throw on down here a solid color. We'll make that easier to see. Drop that down to like a gray or something, and then I'll put this on the bottom. Hey, my UVs are much easier to see. Go ahead and double click your UVs and then make them go a little slow here. I'll just add a stroke. And in my stroke option, my graphics card is actually in a non-compliance at the moment, so you probably won't see many of these features work for me. But this should be working for you. A stroke of 10 you should actually see being adjusted here. I am not seeing anything happen because my graphics card is being a butt. Let me change this from outside. Maybe I can get a better result if I do inside. Center. Looks like I'm stuck with outside. My graphics card's not happy. Okay, so we'll take this. Whatever background color you want for your building is what you probably use here. But because it's easy to see on a dark background, I'm going to keep this. And then for the actual windows, I'm going to come over to my shapes. I'm going to look for my rectangle. I'm going to place in what I want for windows, and you know, somewhere down here, maybe I'll put like a door. So click and drag. Looks like a window. Go ahead and zoom in on that. Depending on the version of your Photoshop, you might have the option to crease these corners. I'm going to go ahead and grab this little icon here and crease the corners. There's my window. And I will give it a windowy color. So for my fill, maybe I'll pick like a light blue here. What's a good glassy color? That looks good. If you need my values, they're right here, RGB. Okay. And voila, there's my window. This is not going to be the prettiest result, but we're going to get it going. Now I'm going to hold down the Alt key, click and drag. I will make my next window. And I currently have snaps turned off. So I'm going to come up to my view option. I'm going to come down. Oh, snaps are on. It's just not behaving. Okay. There we go. That's better. Space this out a little bit, and then Alt, click and drag, make another window. That looks pretty good. Go to my layers. Here are my windows. You grab these. Now that's a shift click, so click and then shift click the bottom one. I'm going to nudge these over to where they're about even. I'm using the arrow keys to nudge. That looks pretty good. I'm going to hold down Alt with these three selected. I'll drag down. Looks to be a good distance. I'm going to rinse and repeat that. Alt and drag down. There we go. Here are some windows. I'm actually not going to bother with the door just because of time. But there we go. So we'll have this. You could make a door if you like. You can even make these look more window-like. I think I will tweak that just a little bit. I'm going to grab the top rectangle. I'm going to scroll all the way down to my bottom rectangle here. Hold Shift and click. And then with those selected, I'm going to come down to my little folder icon here and make a folder or a group. And I'll call this Windows. Okay. And with that, I can actually open this up and I can grab all of the windows here. Select them all. And if I go to my properties, I can come down to my fill. You see I have an option to set up a gradient. And if I choose the gradient option, you see I have a bunch of stuff I can do. Let's change the angle on our linear. We'll pretend that the sun is coming up from the top here. If you're doing this inside of the game engine, it's better if you actually have reflections, but I'm going to cheat these. And then for my color, if I click on this, I can then click on the color option here and pick whatever my color is going to be. Okay, that one's good. Come back to my layers. I'll collapse my Windows layer over here. And then I'm going to hold down the Alt key. Uncheck the auto select box. If you don't, when you click and drag, you might just grab one window. And I actually want to grab the whole group here. So I'm going to come up, close my group. Uncheck auto select, hold down Alt, and then drag. So here's my next group of windows. Now, if you do your UVs differently, if you stack your UVs so that all of these boxes are on one section, you can cheat and use the same color space. So you have to do one set of windows, but then you have to do a second UV set and then separate them again. So either method works, but you do have to create two UV sets if you do the other one, just so you're aware. Anyway, Alt, click and drag, make the next set of windows. And then Alt, click and drag, make the next set of windows. Yay. Okay. I'm actually going to lighten my buildings up just a tad. So for my so what I'm going to do is I'm going to set a background color that's more like concrete. I'm not going to use this. I'm going to create an empty layer down here. Drag my empty layer down. That's good enough. I'm going to call this one concrete. I'm going to fill this in. It'll fit the shape roughly of my building. So I'm going to grab my magic select tool here. If I click and hold, you can look for the magic wand selection. And I'm going to come down to my UVs. I'm going to click in the background. It's going to select the outline. Okay. And then I'm going to go ahead and click on the concrete this time. Go up and hit select. We'll do inverse. And you can see the selection now has a good outline of my building, which is awesome. Maybe find a color that is good for concrete. Maybe I'll do like a light gray. And then I'll grab my secondary color, this background color here. I'll do a slightly darker gray. Slightly darker, not too dark. Let me do a clouds in here. So filter, render, clouds. Not too bad. Let me do an adjustment real quick. I'll do image, adjustments, and then levels. Let's average this out a little bit. So what I'm doing is I'm removing the darkness. So I'm taking the darks back a little bit so it's a little bit more even. And then one last little thing I'm going to add under filter. You can see my 3D effects is actually turned off because my graphics card's broken. So we'll come down and do noise instead. And hit add noise. And that looks pretty good. 5. Yeah, it's probably fine. I'll hit OK. Speckles it up just a little bit. Yeah. Let's go ahead and save this file. We'll do a save as. Call this City Defense Skyscraper. We'll change the UVs to diffuse, D-I-F-F-U-S-E. And I'll hit the drop down. Photoshop file is good. We'll hit save. Let that process. Control D to deselect my outline here. Now I'm going to load this in Maya. So come back. We'll close my UVs. Let's go ahead and right click, grab object mode. We're going to clear the history on this. Nice and clean. Let's go to rendering. Come down to one of your shaders here. I'm going to choose Lambert because that's going to look more like concrete. I'm going to go to Lambert 2. We'll call this one, I don't know, whatever you want to call this material. I'll call this one Skyscraper Material. Then I'll search for it in my search box. Hit the little checkered box there. Then File. And then Folder. We're in Images. I'm going to go back one layer. Make sure we're in the actual images. We were in source images a second ago. Let's go into regular images. And let's do City Defense Skyscraper diffuse. You liar. There it is. I'll press 6 to bring up the color. And here is my building. Hey! Not the prettiest building in the world, but it'll work. And if you look, you can see the concrete-ish colors here. Okay, now to make this pop out a little bit more, I'm going to come over into Photoshop. I'm going to do one more section of this. So we have this, right? We're going to create a UV section where we're going to change all the windows because we want the windows to sink in and we want the building to kind of pop out. So I'm going to grab these, okay, all the way down through the concrete. I'll create a new folder. Inside that folder, I'm going to call this one Diffuse. So that gets our diffuse. Awesome. I'm going to Alt and then copy that, so Alt and drag. I'll turn the diffuse layer off. The new one is going to be, I'll call this one normal. Open it up. Again, our top one is off. We want to keep that. So select the first one, come down, select the bottom one. I'm going to right click, merge layers. This is going to collapse these into a single layer. I'm going to just put a color filter over it. So go ahead and double click that. Come down, we'll do a color overlay. I'm going to do these as black. Hit OK. Set the opacity to 100%. Hit OK. So now from here, we're going to go ahead, go up to your normal. We'll go ahead and collapse that. We're going to Alt, drag the normal down one more time. We'll turn off the original normal. We want to collapse this new one into a single layer. So go ahead and right click, merge group. And this will give us a new layer that's all by itself. We can do filter. I'll come down to 3D. And we'll hit generate normal. And that looks like a little better. If we actually change this from sphere to cube, we'll get something like this, where they're kind of sunken into the building. And you can actually adjust this with an invert. So one will sink in, one will pop out. Okay? And you can flip this inside of Unity and Unreal, so it doesn't really matter. We'll hit OK. And you'll end up with a normal map. Now mine did not render correctly because my graphics card is not being happy. Let me go ahead and close, minimize that one. I'm going to turn on my my normal original, minimize, or let me go ahead and expand that. There we go. On the concrete, I'm going to go ahead and remove the effect this time. So right here, there's a little eyeball under effects. I'll remove that. And you can see that the effect should have been removed in my version up here. My Photoshop is being a pain. It's actually taking a second to refresh. Hold on, let me see if I can get to refresh here. There we go. All right, there it goes. You can see that the background is a little bit more suited. I'm going to go ahead and hit the minimize for that. And then I'm going to hold down Alt and then drag down. Once again, I'm going to go ahead and collapse this one. This guy right here. I'm going to run the normal map filter on that again. Hopefully my system will not have a stroke about it. Okay, and you can see with this one, because I left the texture pattern on there, you can see we get a really nice granulated sort of concrete. So either one of the methods you just saw would work for this. Hit OK. And there goes my Photoshop kind of glitching out. Don't worry, it's still technically functional. Okay. So we're going to take the normal that we like. I like this top one here. Go to File. First, we're going to save our project in case it breaks. We go to File here, come down to Save Copy. And in my copy, I'm going to change this from diffuse. Wow, it's going real slow. To normal. And then hit the drop down. We'll do a targa. I'll save that. We're going to do 32-bit. Okay. And then I'm going to go ahead and turn on the diffuse version, like so. Now, I'm not seeing this change because my Photoshop is glitching out. So let me go ahead and just reopen it real quick. Okay, so I'm back in. And this is the original diffuse. Awesome. I'm going to go make sure I save this one out as a copy. And we're going to save this as a target this time. So target. And I'll remove this little copy piece. So we do have the diffuse PSD, which is fine, but I'm actually going to use the target because it's a little bit better on compression. So I'll go ahead and do that as 24-bit. And then inside of Maya, I can select my building here. Under color, I'll hit the little arrow, and I will change the little ending tag from PSD to TGA. Hit enter, and you'll see it'll update. It looks exactly the same, except it's a little bit better on compression. There's a little back arrow. There we go. And then for the actual normal map, we have to go down to bump mapping and hit this little option box here. File folder, and then we get this bump map value. We're going to change this from bump to tangent space normals, and then hit the little arrow here. We'll go ahead and locate our file. For whatever reason, it drops us in the source images. We'll go ahead and go back up one. We'll go to image, and I'll just search for it here. City defense, skyscraper, normal.tga. There we go. And there is our building with the normal map applied. It's a bit extreme. You can actually dial this down. So if you go hit this little back arrow, if you come here, you have a depth value. You can also check to see if object space normals works better for you, but the default should be tangent space. You can also try bump. You can see what you get here with a bump. If you use the bump filter inside of Photoshop, if you use this, let me grab an item here. If we use this, let me grab something that works. If you use the bump height, it'll generate a bump map for you, and you can use the bump feature. Okay, but I'm going to go back to tangent space normals, and I'll dial this down a little bit. Let's see which I like. Let's see, 0.5 looks pretty good. And here's my building, ready to go, right? Cool. I haven't saved yet, so this is going to be skyscraper. And then I'll export selection. So select it, file, export selection, and then skyscraper. Make sure we're using the FBX export. Smoothing group should be checked. So should this one, and then animation should be unchecked. And what export? Yay! So this is ready to go into Unity, but now we have to build the fractured version, which we will do in the next video. Okay? Save your work, and I shall see you next time. Hey guys, thanks for checking out my channel. Misty and I both thank you. If you enjoyed that video just watched, make sure you hit that like button and subscribe. Also, we're at 1,400 subscribers. Woo! If you have any suggestions for future videos, go ahead and leave them down in the comments. And if you want to keep up with me on Twitter, it's BruceRF1. That's also in the description. And if you want to support the channel, make it easier for me to make content for you, check out some of my merch or one of my books. But yeah, all that, again, is in the description. Check it out, and I shall see you next time.